Hi, in this video I'm going to read to you the second horror story of Swiss Frankenstein, financial horror stories. It starts on page 33 and it ends on page 45, so it's relatively long compared to the other stories. Specula, based on Dracula. Sanguine has gone through exceptional growth, almost like a startup IT company, but unusual for a developer of medical equipment. How do you explain this? Asked journalist Edward. The tone of his voice reflected a kind of too good to be true cynicism. Representing the Financial Times, he was typically one of the first at press conferences like this to ask questions, and this time it was no different. The room was filled with journalists, as Sanguine had become a very hot stock for reasons not fully understood by financial analysts. Meaning both positive under difficult circumstances and bloody or bloodthirsty, the name was somehow appropriate for the type of product and indeed the success of the company. The young, not unattractive CEO of the company, standing on stage with her black turtleneck sweater, answered immediately. Blood transfusion has traditionally been a very important but rather dull area of the medical profession. What we have managed to develop is a blood transfusion device that does its job not just well, but importantly, it is small and simple to use. It can be used on everyone, everywhere, and under most circumstances. More than any other device, it helps countless people around the world in remote and poor areas to give and obtain blood where it would not otherwise be possible. Everyone loves it, the patients, the doctors, and yes, also investors. A journalist sitting next behind Edward made a comment to his neighbor. Investors, haha. She seems to have only one key investor. Incredible how she is answering this question with a basic sales pitch. One investor? Edward thought. Really? Why did I not hear anything on that before? Why would that be? He gave it some thought, but the identity of the investor did not come to mind. Not great PR to have only one real investor, like the rest does not believe in it. The thought of the single investor kept him curious for the rest of the day. Why would one investor invest so much in something unsexy like blood transfusion? Surely there are better investments than blood. Or is it an unsexy but profitable niche? I don't really know. It is such a hyped company though. I should write an article on the secret investor behind it. It should pay off. It took him days on the internet and calling around in his network to find out who the investor was and where it was based. He had been browsing countless sites related to the blood industry. Very big business actually. Not quite oil or data, but he did find references to red gold, and in fact even illicit trade in blood, and even blood bank robberies. Amazing. Sanguine was a private company, and it seemed to be very private about its private investor base. The name Specula SRL appeared somewhere online after a long search, but it wasn't based on any hard information. Edward had spent a lot of time searching through online Italian company registers to find a company by that name, but without any luck. At some point he scrolled a bit further down internet search results and found out that SRL didn't just mean Società a Responsabilità Limitata in Italian, as seemed logical, but also had a Romanian meaning, Societate cu Răspundere Limitată. Would it be a Romanian company? He found the Romanian company's register quickly. The search for Specula SRL resulted in a clear hit. A company was registered by that name in the county of Brașov. He looked it up and saw the photos of the medieval city in the Transylvania region of Romania among the Carpathian Mountains. What an amazing old city. I need to go there to research into this. He wrote down the address, Strada General Traian Musui 24, Bran 500025, Romania. Curious about the location, he googled it. An old castle came up, Bran Castle, dated 1377. What the F is this company based in a 1377 castle? He searched further for information on the castle and the company. It was owned by descendants of Romanian royalty and had a long history, but otherwise he could not find much of use. Descendants of Romanian royalty? Such people investing massively in blood transfusion? He spoke with his boss, the editor of FT. It did not take long to convince him that the potential story about the mysterious Romanian royal investor behind the spectacular growth of an unusual company involved in red gold was worth looking into. Edward was soon on a plane to Bucharest. When he arrived at the airport, he rented a car and drove directly to Bron, where he checked into a hotel with a good view over Bron Castle. Kim Park-Run hung up the phone after a long call with a Romanian fund manager he had not been in touch with before. It was an unusual call with an unusual potential client, but it looked very profitable. Amazingly profitable, in fact. With sparkling eyes, he looked out of the window of his offices on the 49th floor of IFC Seoul, the South Korean capital's leading financial center. He had been involved in quite a few major deals as head of debt capital markets of Korean Investment Securities, the country's largest investment bank, but not one of this magnitude yet. He had just been approached to arrange the issue and sale of bonds worth about 5 trillion won, the equivalent of $3.5 billion US, a huge amount. The fees and profit were mouth-watering, close to 100 million. He stared out of the window. The conditions would be challenging. Selling all bonds to individuals as investment for their retirement was already highly regulated, but that wasn't the biggest challenge. How to build the risk of losing the entire value of the bond if the Korean exchange Kospi index fell below a certain value, and still being able to sell was the biggest challenge. The conditions would have to be mentioned somehow in the prospectus, and that could easily kill the appetite for the bonds. How can I make retirees eager to buy this despite the risk? He smiled, turned around and walked back to his desk. I'll give it a spin. Been there, done that. Edward has set his alarm for early the next morning. He intended to park himself out of sight, but with a close view of the entrance of Bron Castle. A good time to see who is coming in and going out. He arrived around 7 in the morning on the only road that led from the village of Bron to the castle. Passing through the village, he noticed a restaurant that seemed good to have lunch, dinner and drinks, a good place to hang out with locals to find out more about the inhabitants of the castle. He drove up the road to the castle and parked his car at the Parkul Regional Park, just before the approach to the castle. He walked through the park below the castle that was situated on the hill above, and came back to the road to see who would pass by. The castle looks old, deserted, a bit spooky. Would anyone really work there? Could this really be the offices of a company that owns Sanguine, the world's leading blood transfusion and storage company, controlled from a medieval castle in Romania? He waited for quite some time, lurking between the trees on the side of the road leading to Bron Castle. Nothing much happened. What am I doing here? Even if something happens inside, how am I going to find out? After an hour he heard something. Hang on, what is this? He dug away behind a tree. 2 long black Bentleys with fully tinted windows appeared, followed closely by 5 black GMC vans. What the hell is this? Who are in those Bentleys? What is in those vans? The cars didn't even brake as they headed towards the gated entrance to Bron Castle. The gate opened just in time and let the caravan of cars through, shutting closed immediately after. He lost sight. It was the first and last moment in and out of the castle. Fascinating. Something is happening in there. Not sure what, but something. Something that seems to fit with big investments. After another few hours, Edward headed back to the village. Nothing more had happened, but he still felt energized. Something seemed worth looking into. The Bentley should mean wealth, business, unusual. Why here? In the middle of nowhere in Romania. I need to find out. People in the village must know. He went to the restaurant that he had seen on the way and ordered a coffee. He looked around. Not too many people around. The old man might know a little of local history. He may not speak English though. I can try. He moved closer. Excuse me, sir, can I ask you something? The man murmured something back in Romanian. Useless. He nodded politely and looked around. A girl and a guy in their 20s looked curiously at him from a table nearby. Can we help? Asked the girl. Yes, thank you very much, said Edward, as he approached their table. I'm a journalist from London, and I'm looking for information on a company that's registered here in Brum. I was wondering if you've heard of it and if you know anything about it. That's interesting, said the girl. What company is that? They seemed quite interested in talking to a journalist. Typical. The name of the company is Specula SRL. It's registered in what seems to be Bron Castle up the hill. The girl looked at the guy for a moment. I haven't heard of that name, have you? No, said the guy. Not the talkative type. The girl seems more useful. The girl started talking while looking outside of the window in the direction of the castle. The castle is owned by descendants of a very old Romanian family, a former royal family. Nobody knows much about them. They're a bit creepy. We just see big and expensive cars going to the castle, but you can never see who is inside them. She looked at Edward. What's special about this company? I can't tell them too much. Enough to keep them talking without being the talk of the town. I'm looking into particular investment companies, and this is one of them. Nice and vague. Right, said the girl, sounding a little disappointed, as if she had expected more. The guy received a phone call and said he had to leave. She said goodbye. Excellent. She could be of good use as a local guide and interpreter. What's your name? Asked Edward. Viviana. That's a beautiful name. Nice to meet you, Viviana. Would you mind if I ask you something? Of course not. I could use someone like you very well who can speak Romanian and knows the town. If I would pay you something like €100 a day or something, could you help me with finding information, talking to people, guiding me around, that sort of thing? If you have time? Viviana blushed. Yes, sure. Great, thank you very much. You have to keep quiet about it though, promise. It's not really secret what I'm doing, just another company I'm looking into. But I don't want any rumors or gossip about a journalist because it may stand in the way of getting the information I'm looking for. I don't mean it badly, but I won't pay you if I found out that you were talking about it. Apologies. I understand, no problem, said Viviana. Great, thank you. Money talks in every language. Probably good money for her. Worth it, hopefully, he smiled. 2 days later. Viviana is great. She could be an investigative journalist herself. Finding out who in Bron Castle delivers mail to the castle. This guy knows someone at the castle, some kind of concierge. The concierge's wife knows Viviana's mother. Great, she asked her mother to subtly make some inquiries and find out that Specula is apparently having a shareholders meeting soon. Lucky on timing, as well as actually an invite was sent out and preparations are made for the meeting. Amazing that you actually still send out physical mail to shareholders. Perhaps old shareholders that are not keen on IT. Kim Park-Run smiled, an unusually large smile. The book building of the Cosby retirement bonds had achieved a level he had agreed with the Romanian fund. He had closed his largest ever sale of bonds to over 15 Korean mutual funds and insurance companies in which Koreans could invest to live from when they retired. No idea why a Romanian fund with a funny name would be interested in paying such a big premium to see this succeed. But hey, no reason to be difficult. His smile grew even larger. That would be one hell of a bonus. His smile briefly faded. Let's just hope the Cosby index would not go below the set floor to make them lose their investment. That would be a disaster. The index would need to drop quite a bit, but it wasn't impossible. Better not think about it. The most beautiful flowers grow near the abyss. His lawyers had been able to disclose the risk in the minimum viable way to comply with regulations, and his marketers had also been able to downplay the risk by emphasizing the potential upside of the Korean companies that formed part of the Kospi index. Korean companies fuel your pension, it said on the marketing materials, showing smiling elderly Koreans. As simple, as successful a slogan to get over 5 trillion won of bonds sold. Kim smiled a big smile again. Edward, I saw something about Specula on the internet. I don't know if it's the same company, but you may want to have a look. Her voice on the WhatsApp voice message sounded excited. Back in London again for a week, Edward opened the link she sent. It was a Korean financial news site that mentioned a bond issue arranged by investment bank KIS, underwritten by a fund named Specula. It didn't mention anything more about Specula, and he didn't find any further information about it. A bond issue targeting real estate investors, retail investors in Korea aiming to finance their pension? Is this the same Specula? What on earth would they do in Korea? He looked up the Korean desk of Financial Times and called up a colleague there. No answer, so he left a message asking for information on the underwriter named Specula. Not much later, he received a message back from the colleague saying he didn't have any, but would keep an eye out. Viviana sent him another message a week later. She had found out through her contacts when the shareholders meeting was going to take place, on Friday of next week. She also mentioned that the black vans had been coming every few days, usually every 3 days or so. None of her sources had been able to tell what they were bringing. That's great work, Edward wrote back on the shareholders meeting, then decided to call her. Hi Viviana, this is great, thank you very much. As you know, I tried to contact the company for an interview, but they never responded to my calls or emails. I really need certain information about them, so I was wondering if you have a way to get me into the castle for that meeting. I'm happy to pay anyone, including you, a very good price to arrange this. This is a borderline criminal proposal. Hang on, I have to give this a twist. I wouldn't normally go this far for information, but trust me, Viviana, I am with a very reputable newspaper, and I would not do this if I didn't have a reason for it. I can't tell you, unfortunately, but this is very important. It's very important that I find out. Viviana thought for a few moments. Let me try. She paused. How much can I say you offer? If I get in and can listen to what happens in the shareholder meeting, I'll get you and every person that is needed to get me there €2,000. Enough to be really appealing, but not so much that they would get too suspicious. Thanks, said Viviana. I'll see what I can do. I can't promise this one. Wednesday before the shareholders meeting. Edward flew back to Bucharest on the Wednesday before the shareholders meeting, even though he had not heard back from Viviana yet. I have to be there, even if she doesn't manage to get me in. He called her up from the airport on the Wednesday afternoon. Hi Viviana, I have arrived, but I have no idea yet if I can get in. Did you manage to find any way to get me in? Hi Edward, yes, it should work, but I will only know tomorrow. Our concierge friend can ensure that you will be allowed in, but you will need to pose as a courier. I spoke with another man who is actually a courier, and he promised to let you use his courier van in a uniform. It may not fit perfectly, but it should be good enough. He will need his van to do the rest of the work, so the plan is that you drive into the castle in uniform, be allowed into the mailroom, and further into the castle from there. You will need to be quick, as he will wait outside of sight of the castle to take over the van from you once you are finished. Security may also get suspicious if you stay too long. That sounds great. So what depends on tomorrow? Our concierge friend, his name is Jon, will need to work on Friday. He's normally off, but he said he will probably be able to arrange that he works on the Friday. More importantly, he needs to get you to the place some kind of microphone. You need to get you to place some kind of microphone or recording device. I see, said Edward. The concierge believes only a recording device is possible, but the recording needs to be done by you, and it needs to be small, of course. Nobody dares to record anything or to put personal device there and risk their job. This would need to be an unforeseen infiltration by a fake courier if it ever comes out. What recording device? I don't have anything. My phone? How am I going to get it back? Do I need it back? Hang on. I can buy the phone with a prepaid SIM card and can call for some hours. Call myself on another prepaid SIM card that I'll pay with cash and hide the phone in the room as the call is ongoing. He mentioned the idea to her. She nodded. Yes, something like that. There's an electronic shop in the village where you can buy a phone and get a prepaid number as well. It will be better if you buy it, and not here in Bron, but in Brasov or elsewhere. Can you do that? I'll give you cash. Yes, sure. It was still early in the morning when Edward was woken up in his Romanian guest house overlooking Bron Castle. A WhatsApp voice message from the Korean colleague he had contacted before to ask about the bond issue launched with support of Specula. He listened as his colleagues told him that the North Koreans had launched another missile, but this time it had been aimed at Seoul. It had been intercepted, but nonetheless had a very chilling effect on the Korean stock exchange. The Kospi index was tanking and had actually triggered the non-payment clause in the bonds that had only just been sold to countless pension investors. They essentially lost the equivalent of almost $4 billion. His colleague mentioned the news of his loss was breaking and he wanted Edward to be aware of it. Edward sat up straight and looked out of the window. He had not closed the curtains and looked at the castle. What on earth is going on here? Hopefully that shareholders meeting will make it more clear. Viviana had once again delivered very well. Dressed like a courier of UPS driving in a brown UPS van, he was inside the castle in no time and he was greeted by the concierge friend. Without showing any sign of being complicit, he had casually walked with him to the room where the shareholders meeting was going to take place, as if to show the courier to a person to personally deliver the package. Edward had called himself on his other prepaid phone and placed the iPhone Viviana had bought in a place where no one would look for anything, then walked out again like a courier would. No one really cared or checked anything on the way. Brilliant. He was back at the guest house, listening to nothing essentially for over 6 hours already. Viviana was sitting next to him, ready to translate what would be said. I hope the battery of the phone will last, Edward said. His own iPhone was on the charger already. It should, said Viviana. There was no sound until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, not even of a door opening or chairs being moved. Out of the blue, a voice started talking in English. Welcome to the annual meeting of the Bad Dam's family. Dan gave Viviana a what is this look. The voice on the telephone speaker continued. It is great to see you, or at least the hands representing you, haha. Soft laughter was audible. The voice sounded unreal, not human, in a cheerful way, a bit scary. During this meeting we will also have the shareholders meeting of Specula. The purpose of this meeting is to establish how our aim to increase misery under management has been realized over the past year. Misery under management? What on earth is this meeting about? Dan looked at Viviana again and frowned, then looked back at his phone. The voice continued. When it is your turn, can you please also raise your hand, identify yourself, and report on what miserable activities you have initiated? Sorry to ask you to identify yourself. We can't see each other after all. And let's keep it that way, at least for others. Let me start. My name is Lucifer, just for the records. I will be chairing this meeting, but I'll participate as well, of course. Hands 1, please tell me about your identity and your activity. The voice broke off. 2 seconds later, the connection was lost. I can't fucking believe this, shouted Edward. The battery must be dead. Why now, for fuck's sake? He looked at his own phone. That was fine. We can't call back, of course. He looked hopelessly at Viviana. This is obviously weird, very weird. Should I be talking to her about it, or should I just leave it vague? She shouldn't get too suspicious. Maybe I need to come up with an explanation, or at least pretend to know what they're talking about. Yes, I should do that. What was that all about, said Viviana. I think I know what they're talking about. A long story, never mind. But he did mind. The mystery only gets bigger. Bad Dam's family? Someone called Lucifer? Who's named after the devil? Participants that cannot see each other? Is this some kind of secret society where they dress up and have funny titles? Freemasons or so? Investing in blood transfusion? Risky retirement bonds? Makes no sense at all. What am I going to tell the editor? Edward paid Viviana, checked out and went back to London, bewildered, utterly bewildered.